Thank you very much. I'll give you the floor, Mr. Rodrigues.
Obrigado, Sr. President.
Thank you very much, President. Well, of course, I could not agree with you more. I'd like to thank you for your words. Europe cannot stop, not at this point in time. And on behalf of the Portuguese Parliament, I'd like to thank all of the presidents who've spoken. It's been an excellent high-level panel. And I'll be presenting to you Edith Estrela, who's been a member of the Portuguese Parliament in a number of parliamentary terms, and between 2004 and 2016, a member of the European Parliament as well. She's got a great deal of knowledge of the areas that were being discussed, so she'll be chairing the next panel. I'd just like to thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
On time, so I would like to remind colleagues that you have the allocated time, and please stick to this allocated time. So let me give the floor first to Mr. Bergerer, a member of the Budget Committee, Germany. Please.
Jetzt müsste es gehen. Ich hoffe, Sie verstehen.
I hope it works now. Can you hear me? Madam Chairman, dear colleagues, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to kick off the first panel. The situation of the pandemic has not really improved much since our last digital meeting in Berlin. There are very many people who are falling ill and dying of the virus as before, and we know that some hospitals are really overstretched, but we have seen that measures taken by our citizens and vaccination campaigns are having an effect. But we know that our economies are suffering severe restrictions, and I think we're going to see a greater number of insolvencies after the crisis, and we're going to see an increase in unemployment rates. And I think it was very important last year under the German presidency that we were able to arrive at an agreement on the MFF, which obviously has led to the various recovery plans. And I think that just goes to show the solidarity underpinning the European Union and the willing to work together. But obviously all of this has to be implemented in the member states. All member states have to ratify the various decisions, because otherwise not one single euro can be spent from these funds. We are working on our own plans. It's true that when it comes to the extraordinary resources and funds from Next Generation EU and the use of these funds, these are two sides of the same coin. And for my own political group in the German Parliament, CDU-CSU, obviously this is the case. We have the Recovery and Resilience Facility, and we have to focus on issues which are important for the future, which means that the resources should not just disappear into the national budgets. We have to make sure that we have proper research and innovation, especially in projects which further green and digital transition. National parliaments are going to have to decide just what the most decisive recommendations are for them. The most important recommendation, these are country-specific recommendations, obviously, and which are the most important when it comes to overcoming the crisis. Taking a look at Germany now, in summer of last year, we set out an ambitious economic programme, and this is going to be the basis for our National Recovery and Resilience Plan. 43% of the monies are going to be spent on climate and energy policies, 20% on digitalisation of the economy, and 15% on pandemic resilience, preparedness of the public health system. Equally, we want to modernise our administration, because we've seen just how important it is to have an administration that works in this kind of crisis. given the importance and the scale of these plans, I think we should always be aware of the fact that the parliaments have to be involved right from the outset and sustainably and permanently. And I think this conference gives us an opportunity to express this desire. I think it was quite right 1 year ago for the Council to extend the Growth and Stability Pact to the end of 2021, which allows us sufficient fiscal room for manoeuvre to see how we can provide support and assistance. But we still have the fiscal rules. I know there are some member states that would like to see this. I represent the position that that we shouldn't. It's not a question that the debt rules are too strict. It's just that some rules are a bit difficult to follow and complex. So we need to reform them, but not do away with them, because the debt procedures are an important element of the economic pillars of the European Union, because they've helped us provide sufficient financial contributions. And now on the financial amounts and this repetitive demand of writing off your debt in the European Union, I think if this were the case, this desire runs counter to the Treaty of the European Union, and the ECB has made this perfectly clear. But when it comes to the substance itself of this particular demand, it's contrasensical. The national banks of the member states obviously hold credits of the central bank, and if all these debts had to be written off, that would be reflected on the ECB balance sheet as well, and so the national banks would have to be recapitalized. And this is a kind of left pocket, right pocket policy, as we call it, so just shifting from one to the other. And so obviously this would not be a good idea. And so we have to make sure, of course, that we don't increase the debt. And I think we have to be very careful about this in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm sorry that I have to really keep an eye on the clock. So my next speaker on the list is Mr. Matos, and you have also 3 minutes for your introductory remarks. Please, the floor is yours.
Members of the European Parliament, members of national parliaments, guests. One of the funding values of the European Union is that Europe will be forged in crisis, and it will be the sum of the solutions found for those crises. That has been the way things have worked in the past, and that's what we are doing now. After the last crisis created a Europe of austerity, which made us poorer, more unequal within countries and between countries, and moving further away from the European social model. And above all, we ended up more divided than ever. This crisis, we're trying to improve the situation, but a question of how this money is to be distributed as debt and as grants, and we need to do this by putting together solutions together with the member states. What we're doing at this moment is creating a new Europe, and the key to that is the national recovery and resilience plans that we're discussing at the moment. Well, the name encapsulates what we're trying to do. Combine the conjunctural issues and the economic cycle with something more structural. We're also trying to look at both demand and supply sides. The recovery can only take place by creating greater resilience. This crisis has exposed Europe's fragilities, low qualifications in Portugal, the lack of capital in the economy, just to name a few of the problems we face. So this recovery and resilience plan is a strategic plan which will try to overcome the obstacles our economy has faced and to try and trace a plan for the future. We are now putting our proposals to public consultation, and we have been one of the first countries to send in our first draft of the plan. We're working week by week with the Commission to try and ensure that we can get the plan up and running as soon as possible so that we can have a flexible and responsive implementation. This can't just be a plan for governments. It has to be a citizens' plan. We're having citizens' consultations right now. There are video explainers. We've consulted the social partners. We're talking to the social economy, the healthcare sector, with environmental groups. This citizens' participation is essential. And our companies need to have this horizon of hope to work towards. To do that, we need to conclude our final version of the plan as soon as possible, send it to the Commission, ensure that it's adopted in Council, and then get down to implementing the measures. We're at the end of the beginning. We all need to be part of this plan and part of the recovery. As Jean Monnet said, we need to create a Europe that's better and different from the previous one, a more sustainable, digital one which includes its citizens, a Europe for the future. Thank you very much.
Slovenia. My last speaker for the introductory remarks is Mr. Račić. The floor is yours for 3 minutes.
About a year ago, we wouldn't even think about meeting from remote places. However, digitalization has made contribution to our reality, and we are able to hold at least virtual conference. A digital society is one of the 2 key goals of Europe. Another goal is green society. And as the chair of the Committee on the Economy in Slovenian National Assembly, I am well aware that functioning economy is the necessary foundation for all other social spheres, social, health, cultural, education. The outbreak of the epidemic seriously undermined all areas of society, including its main pillar of support, the economy. If we help the economy, also other interdependent areas will eventually recover. On the other hand, we are firefighting and taking urgent intervention measures, particularly in the economic, health and social fields, and to preserve jobs. National parliaments are hastily adopting intervention laws to alleviate the impacts on the epidemic in various areas. For example, from April last year to mid-February this year, Slovenian National Assembly adopted 8 major intervention laws affecting practically all segments of the society. Currently, the 9th intervention law is being drafted. We try to make sure that the aid is broad enough and accessible to everyone that needs it. On the other hand, we plan and take strategic and long-term decisions. We need to reflect on what kind of future we tend to, what direction we want to go. We will manage to restart the European economy after this crisis, and Europe will become green and digital, but it will take a lot of efforts and the right investments. Every euro invested must help the economies to recover while minimizing the risk of an asymmetric recovery across member states. Europe is only as strong as its weakest. To achieve this, Europe offers us, but also imposes the following guidance. It is important that the member states work together hand in hand with the European Union institutions to design quality recovery and resilience plans. Each country must honestly acknowledge what are its greatest weaknesses and which sectors are the most affected in need of renewal and largest support. Likewise, we need to identify the future national strategic areas to which we will devote our efforts and funding. Last autumn, Slovenia further intensified its work on the preparation of a national recovery and resilience plan, and Europe offers us guidance. But what about responsibility? Each member state is responsible for selecting and implementing its projects. Reforms and investments must bring realistic and expected effects. We may consider ourselves lucky. Europe will provide financial support, and so will the member states, but on one condition: the money must be spent efficiently, and the project must be targeted, effectively implemented, and must have high added value and strong multiplier effects. Together we can make it. The work is just beginning. Together we are progressing towards our common goal,
concluding.
green,
thank you,
fair and digital Europe. Thank you for your attention. I hope we will meet in live in 6 months' time in Slovenia.
Indeed, we hope so too. And it's my pleasure to give the floor to my co-chair, Mrs. Estrela. So please, the floor is yours.
Dita Harengova.
Thank you very much, Dita Sharantsova. I can see you on the screen, and I wish you all the best of luck. I'd also like to welcome all of the participants in this panel and at the conference. The members of the European Parliament, members of national parliaments. And it's a great pleasure for me to now give the floor to the three rapporteurs from the European Parliament. They are the rapporteurs for the Recovery and Resilience Facility. I will first give the floor to Siegfried Mureşan. He's from Romania, member of the European Parliament and the EPP Group. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Good afternoon, dear colleagues from us here from the European Parliament. When it comes to the Recovery and Resilience Facility, dear colleagues in national parliaments, I would like to say that we, the European Parliament, have successfully concluded our mission with regards to the adoption of the Recovery and Resilience Facility. The law entered into force. And the Recovery and Resilience Facility was adopted here in the European Parliament with a very large majority. 582 votes in favour, only 40 votes against and 69 abstentions. This shows very clearly that the law is supported by a very large majority here in the European Parliament. I would like to thank my two co-rapporteurs, Eider Gardiazabal from the Socialists and Democrats Group and Dragoș Păslaru from the Renew Group, for the excellent and close cooperation that we had throughout this facility, and colleagues in national parliaments. Please be assured that the European Parliament is united on this file. We have adopted it quickly, and we adopted it in the way in which we set clear rules from European level, but within those rules we give you, national member states, the flexibility to use the money where you think it's both needed. Yes, 37% to greening, yes, 20% to digital, but we have established the structure with the 6 pillars, you know it, in a way in which all types of investments that make our economies more resilient can be financed. We have said one thing very clearly. Money cannot be used for filling budgetary loopholes. Money cannot be used for filling ordinary budgetary expenditures. Money is for investments and for reforms, everything that makes our economy stronger, more resilient in face of future crises, cleaner and greener and more digital as well. Very important for us, for the European Parliament, is also that money is well spent, dear colleagues. This is why transparency, control, the rule of law, regulation to be respected is also very important. Now, in order for the facility to become reality, as I said, we have finalized the legislative process here at European level. Each of the governments has to bring up to the Commission their national recovery and resilience plans, but also the national parliaments have to ratify their decision on own resources. We have given our opinion on the own resources decision immediately last year in September. We call upon you, dear colleagues, to adopt as quickly as possible. It's urgent now. You're doing something good for your country, but you're doing something good for the EU as a whole as well if you adopt the own resources decision, so that we give the permission to the Commission to go to the markets, borrow money and make sure the RRF starts working, and help is coming. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. Looking forward to the discussion with you. With the European Parliament will continue also in the implementation of the RRF to fulfill our role. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for those words. I'll now give the floor to the rapporteur, also on the Recovery and Resilience Facility, Eider Gardiazabal. And I'd like to pass on my best wishes to her. She's a former colleague of mine at the European Parliament. You have the floor, Eider.
Muchas gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you, President. It's a great pleasure to say hello to you, even though it is at some distance. I'd like to start off by highlighting the response that we within the European Union have given to the crisis. We have more coordination, more solidarity, and obviously now we have our recovery and resilience plan. There are two main goals to the RRP, the facility, a short-term aspect and then a medium and longer-term aspect, which is going to allow the European Union and its 27 member states to finance reforms and investment to change our model. A lot of the previous speakers have stressed this particular point, that we have to change our model, a green transition, a digital transition, but also an economic and social transition. And I think the Recovery and Resilience Plan gives us a golden opportunity to change this model. The Secretary-General of UN, Guterres, said it's not just a question of going 1 year back. What we have to do is try and move ahead of progress 10 years into the future. And as I said, what we need to do is change our economic model. As a European Parliament, we have set the guidelines, the master plan, if you will, together with the Council. And it's now up to the national parliaments and the national governments. And I'd like to send out a plea to all of you. As Siegfried Mureşan has just said, and many others as well, we would like to urge you to ratify the own resources decision as quickly as possible so that we can go ahead with this plan. And secondly, I'd like to urge everybody to be brave and courageous, i.e. to come up with ambitious recovery and resilience plans. It's not just a question of saying, well, yes, 20% digital, 37% greening. And I think what we ought to do is try and go beyond the minimum figures that have been set. And what we have to do is come up with innovative proposals so that we can maximize the impact of one of the most important recovery plans in the history of the European Union. As far as we're concerned, obviously some of the recovery plans have already been submitted, and as the European Parliament, we are going to have to take a careful look and monitor the way in which the recovery plans are being submitted, see how the Commission is assessing them, and then obviously have an assessment of the overall impact that they're going to have on the European Union. But it's not just a question of the European Parliament monitoring and what's being done. We need to be able to react as well in the short term, if necessary, so that we can come up with new mechanisms, new proposals, or modify the ones we have so that we can really manage to come out of this crisis.
Thank you very much, Eider. The final rapporteur that we'll get a chance to listen to will be Dragos Pislaru, member of the European Parliament. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. It is indeed an honor to stay here in front of you as one of the 3 members of the European Parliament that we've created the team leading and representing the position of the Parliament. We had actually a wider team and representing the European citizens. And we knew from the beginning that we have a duty to deliver a proper recovery and a consolidated resilience to our citizens, especially to young people and children, as we are entitled an entire package, the Next Generation EU. We understood that resilience cannot be actually achieved without ambition. And we transformed this ambition into a solution for the next generation. The Recovery and Resilience Facility is now in the official journal, and I am proud to see the Parliament's vision being present there, to see the 6 pillars, to see the transparency, to see the pillar dedicated to children and youth, to see that social partners and civil society will actually be involved in this important endeavor. Now it's time to make it work. We owe this to the next generation. When our children will ask us about the 2020, we owe to tell them a story to be proud of. And for this to happen, we need to tackle the challenges that we now face when we need to put this facility into practice. First, when we talk about reforms and investments, we need to think about, we tend actually to think about public versus private. This is not a competition, dear colleagues, nor a cash machine to fill budget deficits. The private sector should be at the core of the resilience facility. The private sector is trustful, innovative, and viable partner and should be regarded, as part of the national recovery and resilience plans. Measures that stimulate private investments are actually key for quick recovery of our economy. Second, the National Recovery and Resilience Plan means de facto centralized supervision, but it also means for more efficiency a decentralized implementation. Local and regional authorities are a key factor for defining the reforms and investment needed, and their input is actually crucial in ensuring that it is necessary and viable in terms of implementation. And third, we need to revisit our old conception about investment and spending. The pandemic highlighted the need to connect the dots between different investments, especially when it comes to an integrated approach. Investment in skills, health prevention, keeping our children and youth, protected. These are all actually quintessential for the national plans. And last but not least, it's about national recovery and resilience plans that are based on specificities that are coming from country to country, but needs to be of European relevance. What do we leave behind us? What do we want our next generation to remember? Let's be the politicians that manage to leave aside political games and tactics and focus on using the opportunity as we should. We have a choice. Let's choose to be remembered as the ones that set an example for the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry.
Well, I'll now give the floor back to Vice President of the European Parliament and co-president of this panel, Dita Charantsova.
Muito obrigada. Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President Estrela. Let me continue our discussion. So we will open the discussion to other panelists or to other speakers. Let me also remind you that we are running out of time. So unfortunately, not all of you would be given a floor, but the discussion, as you know, will continue at 5:15. So I'm sure you will be able to participate in the following debates. I would ask each of the speakers to limit your intervention to 1 minute only. Thank you very much, and I would like to give the floor to the chair of Econ Committee from the European Parliament, Mrs. Tinalier, and then I will give the floor to Mr. Jarretier in France. So I'll start with Mrs. Tinalier. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much. My colleagues, the co-rapporteurs, already reminded us the relevance, the impact, the spirit which accompanied the creation of the Recovery and Resilience Facility. Now we are in the delicate phase of the implementation, and now member states will have to do two things primarily. First of all, quickly finalize the ratification process of the decision on new own resources to make the facility up and running as soon as possible, as it was also reminded. And then they should design and implement a recovery and resilience plans that will create the conditions for a solid, sustainable and long-lasting rebound of the economy that represents the basis for a genuine recovery in the countries and the Union. But we would be wrong to consider this, that the work of the European institutions is over, that now everything is in the hands of the member states and that they are alone in the future steps. This is not true. Europe's task will be not only to monitor the spending, investments and the reforms of the member states, not just to be the cop, but to support, to accompany the countries, maintaining the spirit of solidarity and union that has accompanied us in recent months. We must be careful that the implementation of this powerful instrument does not become either a competition between countries and not a constant conflict between member states and the European institutions. Absolutely. So we will have to work together. There is only one way to build a stronger and more resilient Europe, looking for solutions together, building projects and responses together, and opportunities like the one we have today to discuss and discuss with each other are very precious in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to give the floor to Monsieur Geretier, and the following speaker will be Mrs. Erotokritou. So, Monsieur Geretier, the floor is yours, please.
Vous m'entendez, c'est bon?
Oui, c'est bon.
Parfait, merci.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Well, I realise we're short of time. I just wanted to speak on behalf of our national parliament. There are three important factors here. There's the development of the European Union through these national plans. There needs to be coherence between the different countries. I think that's a necessity. The second factor I'd like to flag up is that we need to avoid fragmentation. We need targeting of these financial interventions, investment in particular. I'm afraid we have lost the sound for the speaker.
Conformité quand même des plans nationaux sur ces deux sujets. Et le troisième.
And the third factor is that we should not forget economic and financial coordination. I'm afraid we've lost the sound again.
L'Union européenne, parce qu'à terme, et on a parlé de ressources propres, il ne faudra pas évoquer.
Now, we should not forget the problem of resources and financial revenue. We have to consider that the EU as a whole and in each member state. Those are the three aspects I wanted to flag up for you.
Now I would like to give the floor to Mrs. Erotokritou, and the following speaker will be Monsieur Confin. So Mrs. Erotokritou, the floor is yours.
Please press the speak button.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much. Η εκταμείευση των ευρωπαϊκών κονδυλίων στο...
So, using these particular funds in the recuperation and resilience facility, of course, depends on setting clear targets that will be reached at the European level. This, of course, this, of course, requires parliamentary control and surveillance. And also, this is absolutely imperative for there to be a proper disbursement of these funds. In other words, once again, parliamentary oversight. So we have to make sure that we have such mechanisms in place in order to have these types of control, to deal with this program and any program in the future, in order to have proper use of European funds which are dispersed to member states of the European Union within the framework of recuperation and resilience. Cyprus is committed to deal with this issue effectively. It will work together with the European Union through a whole series of different reforms that will be adopted at the local authority level and at other levels as well, where it will be necessary to have close control of the use of these funds. We have to have a close communication and a strategy, close communication policy, so to say, that will provide for this. And it is absolutely necessary to work in this concerted fashion in order to move forward effectively. I ought to mention that a program cannot be effective unless we have an effective vaccination program throughout the continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is the chair of the ENVI committee from the European Parliament, Monsieur Coffin, and the following speaker would be Mr. Pavic. So, Monsieur Coffin, the floor is yours.
Monsieur Coffin, votre caméra n'est pas allumée. Appuyez sur le bouton Speak. We could proceed to the next speaker.
Yes, okay, let's proceed with the next speaker, Mr. Pavic from the chair of the committee in Croatia. The floor is yours. And the next speaker would be Mr. Pesko, please. So, Mr. Pavic.
Recovery and resilience is 24.5 billion euros, which will ensure economic recovery and resilience and transition to more greener and smarter Croatia. I would point out that we had also 2 devastating earthquakes. Just one in Zagreb created damage more than 11 billion euros, which is far more than the whole recovery and resilience package for Croatia. When we look at the recovery and resilience package, we have 6 billion of grants, which is 11% of GDP, which is one of the top investments in the EU. We agreed that jobs on EPP meeting is necessary. We already invested 1.5 billion euros into job creation, and I'm grateful to the Commission that in January they adopted European battery innovation, where we'll propose Rimac cars as one of the fastest cars in Europe, in the world, electrical cars as a project. Croatia first adopted own resources decision in December, and we wish all participants the best in this discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Pesko, and the next on my list is Mrs. Juric-Nicholson.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to all of the institutions we've heard from. It's a pleasure for me to be here, and I'm proud to be from Italy, one of the countries that proposed this measure. Italy is going to be able to benefit from favourable financing conditions for its reforms, all thanks to the own resources decision. However, we have quite a lot of problems to face. Tax evasion, unemployment, and school dropout levels are high. We need reforms, we need investments, and we also need to rebuild our infrastructure. Our country in recent years has suffered a lot under austerity, and our public administration has been impoverished in terms of skills and in terms of staffing. We need to ensure that we're in a position to improve this with new technologies, to improve our public administration, because that is the key to everything else. So we need to recognize that our public administration needs to be modernized. Thank you very much.
Grazie mille. Next speaker, Mrs. Juric-Nicholsonova, the chair of the Ample Committee of the European Parliament, and the next speaker then is Mrs. Lind. So now, Mrs. Juric-Nicholsonova, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. The Recovery and Resilience Fund is a unique opportunity for the member states to launch all the reforms that had been too slow or even forgotten in the past. From my point of view as the Ample Chair, we should concentrate on, first of all, education and skills. We have to create the conditions which will enable our future generation to fully exploit the opportunities of digital and green world of tomorrow. Then second part would be research and development. The innovations are essential for coping with digital and green transition in a way which will provide more opportunities for the countries and Europeans, and especially the young generation. Finally, in reforms, we cannot forget about vulnerable groups of our societies, especially children. Children in European Union can no longer experience poverty or restricted access to essential services. In order to fully exploit the fund, we have to prevent the mistakes from the past. In many countries, it was the corruption and the slow and insufficient use of EU funds. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Mrs. Lind, followed by Mrs. Dinica from Romania. So now Mrs. Lind, Sweden. The floor is yours.
Mrs. Please activate your camera, Mrs. Linteva.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, there must have been a mistake. I haven't asked for the word, but I'm really appreciating this day today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Mrs. Dinica, and then I would give the floor to Mr. Van Overtveld from the European Parliament. But now, Mrs. Dinica from Romania, please.
Thank you. Distinguished members of Parliament, dear all. As President of the Economic Committee of the Romanian Senate, I welcome the swift approval by the European Parliament of the Recovery and Resilience Plan, designed to help EU countries tackle the effects of the pandemic. We would like to express our deep appreciation for the efforts paid by the members of the European Parliament directly involved in this process. Romania recognizes the Recovery and Resilience Plan's importance to fight this crisis and to build our strength to overcome future challenges. It shows the importance of solidarity and joint efforts in difficult times. Romanian Minister of Investments and European Projects has recently presented in the European Affairs Committee of the Senate with an update on the current state of the National Recovery and Resilience Plan elaboration. As this health crisis is overcome, our focus should be on how to build back better. We are looking forward to work together to build a stronger and more resilient future for our Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to give the floor to the Budget Chair, Mr. Van Overtveld, followed by the Chair of ENVI Committee, Monsieur Coffin. So now, Mr. Van Overtveld, please.
Thank you very much. We heard plenty of arguments of how crucial public resources will be in tackling the multiple challenges we have on recovery, resilience, green transition, and of course also reforms. I would like to highlight the potential of the EU budget framed by the new MFF, its new expenditure programs, enriched by the European Recovery Instrument and the RRF, and underpinned by the own resources decision. It can become our common AAA-rated multi-purpose instrument. The EU budget must be a catalyst and boost investment counter-cyclically. It can also be a lever to guarantee and trigger national co-financing and private investment, but the European budget must also be, last but not least, a vector. That is, it has financial power, but it also has to give a direction: innovation, decarbonisation, and more tailor-made support for country-specific needs and objectives. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Last but not least, the Chair of the ENVI Committee from the European Parliament, Monsieur Coffin, please.
Mr. Canva, could you please press the speak button? Mr. Canfin, could you please press the speak button? Madam Chair, you can continue.
Okay, thank you very much, and I'm very sorry that I have to stop the debate now. I'm very sorry that I couldn't give the floor to everybody who asked for the floor, but unfortunately the time is limited. I hope you can continue and participate in the following debate. So let me now give the floor back to my co-chair, Vice President, Mrs. Estrela.
Thank you very much.
Well, indeed, we're quite far behind time, so it's a shame that it's not possible to allow the rest of our speakers list to take part in this panel. And there's no time for reactions either. I'm afraid we are going to have to do our best to try and keep to the time frame, and I'm afraid we're far behind. But before I conclude, I just want to thank everyone for their participation today, everyone who's enriched today's debate. We've heard lots of different perspectives and different comments. It's been a fruitful debate and an interesting one, and the participation has been lively. The European Parliament and national parliaments are going to have a key role in scrutinising the implementation of the recovery and resilience plans. The question is, to what extent can the social partners and civil society organisations and youth organisations, can they take part in the process of creating the national plans? We need to ensure that there's coherence between the recovery and resilience plans and the national reform programmes. It's been stressed that the funds from the RRF have to be used in a just and efficient manner, in line with the objectives that have been set, the digital and green transitions. The Recovery and Resilience Facility has got two key objectives. First of all, it has to bolster our health systems so that we're in a better position to combat pandemics. And we need to support companies and families. But secondly, it also has to promote the reforms that will allow us to create a green and digital transition, to overcome digital and gender divides, and that we need to invest in young people. To do that, we need to invest in education so that young people are empowered to deal with the challenges of the future. We need to guarantee that this fund gets down to where it's needed. Funds that can redesign our economies to make them cleaner and greener without leaving anyone behind. And not leaving anyone behind has to be more than just a slogan. It has to be more than just a declaration of good intentions. It has to be based on a clear political will to transform our societies and economies, to reduce inequalities, to boost our climate action, to try and promote the energy transition. Not leaving anyone behind has to be the key to the strategy. It will be a growth strategy towards a sustainable economy that's greener, more secure and more sustainable, as is enshrined in the objectives for the Green Deal. But these are difficult times we're living through, the times of the pandemic. We cannot leave anyone behind after the COVID-19 crisis. Albert Einstein said that in the midst of our difficulties, we can find opportunity. This crisis is an opportunity for us to unite our strengths, to bundle our efforts around what is essential. And what is essential is salvaging the European project and placing it at the service of our citizens. Thank you very much. I'll now give the floor back to our Vice President of the European Parliament, Mrs. Dita Charantsova. You have the floor.
Muito obrigada. Thank you very much, Mrs. Vice President. I don't have much to add to what you have just summarized from the debate. I would like to also thank all the participants for their active contribution to this debate. For me, what is crystal clear from the debate is that we have our common objective to deliver the recovery and resilience plan to every European citizen. And the only way how we can achieve it is to combine our forces. So let's continue our cooperation in this regard. Let's work together. Let's continue our discussion. Thank you very much. And let me then break now and remind you that the next session will continue at 5:15. Thank you very much.